Hey everyone, David C. Anderson here coming at you from the Knife Center. And even though Blade Show has been canceled, that doesn't mean we can't celebrate Blade Show Week with some of our friends in the knife industry. And today I've got Josh from WorkSharp, some of the sharpening gurus out there. They've got some new products that he's going to show off to us today. How you doing, sir?
Hey, I'm good, David. Glad to be here.
Thanks for being here. I was almost said thanks for having us, but that wouldn't have made sense. So we've got a few new items here. I've got a few of them in front of me. You do as well. And you've got a few new, you've kind of put your own spin on the pull-through sharpener genre. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the Pivot series?
Yeah, indeed we have. So these came out these are called our Pivot knife sharpeners. We've got your basic Pivot, the Pivot Plus, and the Pivot Pro kind of in one family. And we released these last fall at Blade West, a much smaller show, great show up in Portland, Oregon. But that's where these first came out, but they have not seen the official Atlanta Blade Show crowd yet. So happy to be showing them off. The big difference in what we did on these Pivot sharpeners is that we found when using a pull-through style sharpener, that oftentimes it worked best to tip that back so that when you pulled the knife through, you're sharpening at the sharp spine of the carbide rather than on the flat surface of the carbide. So what we did to make that happen, or to accommodate for that in the sharpener, is we put a little lock and release switch here, and it's currently in the released position, and you can see that carbide will actually pivot, hence the name of the lineup, with the knife as you pull through, so that you're increasing the rake angle of those carbides and removing a little bit more material. It's a little bit of a scary thought when it comes to carbides because they can remove a lot of material, but when necessary, that is something that and it is something that you want. This provides you that opportunity. You can then lock that little red switch and that pivot remains static. Flip it over, and we've got a fine ceramic V on the back. We include a little extra value on each of these. There is some form of a diamond abrasive on this guy. There's a flat diamond with a hook sharpening groove in the middle. On the Pivot Plus, we have a tapered diamond rod that slides out from the bottom that is great for sharpening serrations. And on the Pivot Pro, we've got a big diamond plate on the bottom, and it's actually just adjacent to this handle, which allows you to put a hatchet or a hatchet or an axe or some large edged tool in the vise and get some leverage to put an edge back on there, just kind of like a diamond file.
And not
really
just
awesome
leverage, it looks like
tool.
you get a degree of safety there as well. Since you're kind of behind that D guard, you're less likely to impact your hand on that edge.
Yeah, good call out. The engineers would be proud of you for they like to think through all these things, and I get to it on the marketing side of things to talk to the customers and what the benefits are, and I'm sure I always miss something, but yeah, huge safety benefit there. Also, if you compare these to those sharpeners that like run over the knife, this is it looks similar in form factor, but it's very different because your hand is very much off to the side as you pull through that sharpener. So when you're using these, you can use a little bit more pressure if you are reprofiling a knife for the first time on the carbide with it in the pivot location, or this red switch in the pivot location, and then lock that out, use a little bit less pressure, and then even finer when you move over to the ceramic to finish it off. I like this one for fillet knives in the boat. There's nothing electric on it, super simple to use. Fillet knives have a really soft steel, and so the carbide actually doesn't chew them up a ton. If you have a hard or brittle steel, the carbide can break the edge, or if there's any chips or nicks in the blade, it can accentuate those, and we don't want that. But on a fillet knife, oftentimes, and honestly, fillet knives are usually a little bit less expensive. You use them, they get abused, and you replace them over time. So the goal is just to keep them sharp so that you can get those fish bled out or filleted on deck and keep moving on and keep fishing. So it's a great tool for that. Big handle for when your hands are all covered in fish slime. And this one's a good favorite for that. I think you have questions on the
Yeah, so one thing I
on the pivot
noticed,
series.
well, first off, the diamond abrasive that's included on these, what kind of grit are you running on those?
They should be 320 grit.
Okay. And
Yeah, and you could someone might fact check me on that later, but I'm pretty sure all of them are 320.
we'll go to the encyclopedia, and if it's wrong, we'll put up a little graphic or something.
Good.
The other thing that is different from these, well, first of all, I always love like the nice little touches that you guys always put on your devices. I like on this small one especially, you've got some nice rubber pads here, so you can rest that very securely on a table. So you only need a little bit of finger pressure to keep it stable, keep it from tipping over. But correct me if I'm wrong, these carbides are actually producing a convex edge rather than a V-shaped bevel, yes?
Totally. Yep, they are. And I thanks for calling that one out too. So we do, yeah, we that was a big piece of our engineering team coming at this and saying, hey, we like the convex edge. How do we get that in a pull-through style sharpener? And so they actually had the carbides cut in a way that was a concave shape, producing a convex edge. I don't know if and you guys might get some B-roll of this, but I'll try to show that just barely. The biggest benefit that I like, so if you really wanted to take the time and reprofile a knife, sharpen it on one of these pivot sharpeners over and over and over again, you would eventually create a full convex edge. You're also removing a lot of material to get there. But what I like about it in the meantime is that convex edge has a wider angle until the very tip where it all comes together. And so you're actually not scaling the whole side of the knife. You're only touching the very tip until you start working up as you sharpen that knife over years of time to produce that convex edge. So it's a little bit of a conundrum there with the feature providing two different benefits, both short-term and long-term. So, but it's a cool deal. And I really appreciate that when sharpening my own knives on it.
Excellent. So moving on a little bit, these are great, definitely for convenience and for field expediency especially. But for those of us who really like to get a little more granular and have some really fine control over our edges, got a new collaboration with you guys and Ken Onion now, yes?
Yes. Yep. So the angle Set Sharpener is our newest collaboration with Ken, and it's a rod style sharpener, but instead of a V shape, we went with more of an A frame. I've already got it set up here, but essentially I just pulled it out of its own little carrying case. Everything locks in here, if I've got this right, and fits in the box.
Nice and convenient. Stores easily in a drawer, maybe, if you've got this in your kitchen.
Yep, totally stores in the drawer. It is great in the kitchen. Awesome long abrasive, like a 6-inch rod there. So for longer knives, a little bit more convenient. The wings of that slide off like you just saw me do, and then the rod system can pop up. One of the coolest things I like about this that other rod systems don't do so much is that there is a variety of angle adjustment. So we can set at 15 degrees, 17.5, 20 degrees, 22.5, and 25. So 5 different angles. And the way that we do that is in the base here, there are 3 different, I guess, slots for these magnetic bases, or the T here, to clamp into. So if I set on both of the widest ones on the outside, it's 25 degrees. Moving one leg at a time adjusts that angle by 2.5 degrees. So this is 22.5, and then 20 degrees, and then moving one at a time again to 17.5 and 15.
Very nice.
So
I didn't even think
really
about doing
cool.
the single step there as an interim step.
Yeah, and it is labeled like that on the inside. So hopefully it kind of gives people an idea. One of the biggest pieces of feedback that we heard about this initially was that people wanted a haptic click when these rods were squared up. Well, one of the cool things is because that angle is set through the middle of that rod, that rotating actually doesn't change the angle. And so it allows me as the sharpener to bring a knife to the abrasive in a way that's comfortable for me. So I can actually have one of these rods maybe straight out and the other one canted in a little bit, so I can draw down in a very comfortable way without having to totally reposition myself at either side. There's so again, this comes with a 320 grit coarse diamond, a 600 grit medium diamond, and then the fine ceramic. And when you're sharpening on the diamond, usually you're going to do one side till you raise the burr, then switch and repeat on the other side. But when you work down to the finer diamond or the ceramic, you want to be alternating stroke side to side. And so this keeps it really easy to be doing that by, essentially customizing the sharpener to fit you so that you only have one muscle memory to perfect, and letting the sharpener be the variable that adjusts to you.
Mm-hmm.
One other quick feature on this is it includes a tapered ceramic rod, but that locks into the top there, and then you can, because it's tapered, it will fit a variety of different size serrations, and so you can find where that's at and work the serration one at a time. And then I would come back and I would flat draw across the ceramic to remove that final burr that you work up.
And you recommend drawing away from the edge on that stroke?
On that stroke, I would. Yep. Or you could do that. It's more like a stropping stroke, really. And you could do that same thing on a leather strop if you've got one too. That would actually be my preferred method. But if you're using it all in this system, then that ceramic works really well to straighten that back up. I think, this was a fun one from Ken. I know that he, I was actually demoing this one at Blade West, and he's the one who came up to me and watched me doing the demo, which I was, only a little bit nervous about.
No pressure, right?
Yeah, no pressure. But here I've got his, his sharpener that he's worked really hard with our engineering team on. And he's like, hey, why don't you actually turn those in a little bit to make that more convenient for you? I was trying to be, real square up to it and do this thing. And he said, no, tip it like that and get it comfortable and dialed in. And it's a lot easier to use. So the user's job is then to hold the knife. Well, I'll now change it back to so you guys can see, but to hold the knife at a 90 degree and draw it straight down, making contact with the bevel and the abrasive all the way down. Just like any other sharpener, you'd raise a burr, like I said earlier, and then work to hone that off through finer abrasives.
Well, what I like about this too is it feels extremely solid, these rods, when they click into place. They're not wiggling back and forth. That's one thing I was looking at. It's like, I wonder if there's any play there, but they're going to lock into that angle you've set it at, and they're not really moving.
It's really solid. I like how they designed it with the neodymium. Yeah, the magnets there to clamp it in, just so you guys can see, and then the little troughs for that T to rest in. So it does grip in there really solid. Some rubber feet on the bottom there that keep it solid on your workstation, and it's a good one to use. The T handles actually use or work as hand guards too. If you're holding it there, you can kind of hold it under that or pinch onto there, and
that's because of those rubber feet. It's not going to slide as much. That's more just a little bit of stabilization and keeping your hand out of the way.
Yeah, because I do still enjoy holding on to it for whatever reason. I can't seem to go totally freehand with it, but yeah, so that just gives you a little bit more of a handle that's a little bit farther away from the blade you're working with.
All right, I'm going to move this aside for a second and get in. You've actually got two more, I'd say some of the more conventional sharpeners you guys have ever put out, but you've still got some work sharp flavor to them.
Yeah, so these ones, I'll give you a little bit of the story behind that first. So we never like to make, we had some ideas, but we didn't want to come out with what looked like a Me Too product. But the more we talk to our customers, and really that's what drives us to be figuring out what else we can be doing and building. And the more we talk to our customers, there's still this strong desire to be sharpening on systems out there that are either bench stone, diamond stone technology, or whetstones. And there's guys who love doing that and love the process. And so we built some sharpeners that we thought, well, yeah, saving time is what people want the most. So that's where some of the electric sharpeners, where you can get a really sharp edge without a whole lot of time. It turns out, there's still a large piece of the market that really enjoys the process of sharpening and sharpening by hand. And we don't want to rob people of that. And if we're going to acknowledge that that exists, we may as well jump in and say, hey, how can we do this better? And what can we offer that's not out there, just so that we're not, cluttering the market with things that already exist and putting our name on them. But this is a, totally ground up, build something that we're proud of and we think is going to alleviate some of the challenges with more conventional sharpening systems. So that led us to, we got two products, and I'll start with this one called the Bench Stone Knife Sharpener. So it is similar looking to some. There's some great innovation ideas out there with a three-sided triangle. Ours doesn't actually, so I lifted it out of there, but then it rotates around. And so it exposes three different abrasives. Again, we have our 320 diamond, our 600 diamond, and our fine ceramic. And those keep showing up because we've worked really, really hard with the vendors that we use to produce the diamond, both the consistency of the diamond particle and the abrasive, the adhesive that holds that diamond onto the metal plate, nickel coated metal plates. They're really anti-rust or they're rust proof, I should say. And they've just performed really, really well for us, and we've spent a lot of time and effort investing in those. So we want to continue to provide those same abrasives to everyone. So those three abrasives rotate around on this, we call it a tri-abrasive rod or stone. And then we've got, as you'll see here, these angle guides, which are magnetic and interchangeable to offer 20 and 25 degree ramps for sharpening knives. Great for some Western style kitchen knives at 20 degrees. I like to carry my pocket knives at 20 degrees. They have a little bit of a higher quality steel, so they retain that edge. And some older pocket knives or hunting knives that you might want to put a little more durable edge on at 25 degrees. So those just rotate back and forth and clamp on with the magnet. They can also be removed completely if you want to sharpen freehand. The other main and cool feature about this, if you are familiar with our guided sharpening system, which came out several years ago, we included a feature on there called pivot response. Now, not to be confused with, we have a pivot in here that allows it to follow the curve of the blade and to expose that sharper rake angle. This is a side-to-side pivot that allows this diamond to follow the curve of the blade as you draw it across the stone. So I'll see if I can demo here real quick, but resting the knife on the angle guide, bringing it to the stone, and then pushing across, I didn't have to change how I held this knife, and the diamond followed all the way out to the tip, keeping contact, making my job really easy. Again, the sharpener is moving around the knife rather than me having to learn how to change the angle as I draw the stroke through the belly.
Because that's
I
something
locked it out.
Can often trip up people especially when they're first learning. As you follow that belly, having to raise that tip, this just eliminates that.
It totally does, yeah, which is awesome. And yeah, exactly. What I'll see is when I look at people's knives who've sharpened them by hand, it looks really good through the flat section. And then as you get into that belly and the tip, you'll see inconsistency in the light, which just shows that there's a lot of inconsistency in the angle that they're using when they're sharpening. So that's really prevalent when people are sharpening by hand on a flat style stone system. So this red slide down here locks that out so that it is rigid. And then I can release that to allow for the pivot. So if there is a flat blade out there, like a Tonto, if you've got two flat blades coming together, you can sharpen those independently and keep the stone flat, or release that pivot for following the curve of a more traditional blade shape or drop point, something like that.
Very cool.
Yeah, that's something that, in my opinion, kind of changes the game on stone sharpening. Even if you like sharpening on a fixed stone where you have to lift the handle of the knife as you sharpen, I think that it's convenient to and almost more fun to be able to have something that just works for you, and it allows you to be incredibly consistent when sharpening.
Well, what I like about this, and what I like about a lot of the products you guys make, is number one, their quality, and you're doing things to make it easier for people to sharpen. And you're not doing it in a way that has ever come across to me as a gimmick either.
Well, I do appreciate you saying that. We definitely don't want to be showing up as a gimmick, or, not saying it's wrong, but there's no ferrule rods in our sharpeners.
Well, now I kind of want one.
Again, I'm not saying it's wrong. Maybe we'll get there one day, but our goal is to provide excellent knife sharpeners and to keep that as our focus. And there's other great companies that provide great tools that might accompany that. But again, our goal is we want to provide some awesome sharpeners. I've got one more for us. So we've got the WorkSharp Whetstone, which to many it feels like, or we've heard the conversation before that it's whetstones versus electric sharpeners and which one's better. So now WorkSharp's coming out with a whetstone style sharpener, and what gives. And again, the story goes back to just understanding that people want to sharpen on whetstones. Some people do, some people don't, but there's a good chunk of people that want to sharpen on a whetstone. So let's make a whetstone that's affordable and easy to use, and something that people could teach themselves how to sharpen on a whetstone with, and let's see if the people like it. So it's plain and simple. It's called the WorkSharp Whetstone, and we'll start with the stone itself. So we do have the stone made for us from a different vendor, but it's been a fun process. So we had a whole team who has worked with the team who bakes the stones, and rather than just saying, give us one of those that's already off the shelf, we basically partnered with them to come up with a whole new a set of quality standards and abrasive mediums that we think is going to deliver a longer lasting and higher quality stone that we can still deliver at a reasonable price. So we've got it's baked together. It is one single stone, but it uses two different sets of abrasives. We've got a 1,000 grit on this kind of red side, and a 6,000 grit on the white side. And there will be more stones following up with this that will expand on those abrasives. I believe we've got one at 600, and we've got one at 8,000 coming. Don't quote me on that, but there will be expansions, at least. I can say that for sure. Very cool. So they're baked together in one stone, so it's not adhered together. It won't separate, and they will stay. We've done a lot of testing with similar stones out there. We actually have this really cool robotic arm that we can program to sharpen knives, and so we do a lot of lifestyle testing. The thing is a little scary, and we keep it in a big cage. You got to
put that on the market.
Yeah. I don't know what that thing costs, but I walk back there and it's in this big cage, and it just has this arm that is holding, I think it has 3 or 4 arms, and they all hold these we just have some Victorinox chef's knives that they just use to sharpen either on our belt sharpeners that they test, the life of the belts, or, for these. And it's weird going back there when that thing's running and just throwing knives all over the place.
I'm smiling just thinking about it. I have to see this one day.
Yeah. Maybe I'll get some pictures up. Anyway, so we did some testing, and the stone seems to last a whole lot longer before it dishes out. And that's partially because of the packing method that we use on the abrasive, and the baking method as well. So we just dialed in a process there with our vendor. We're really hands-on and have a really high quality standard for these stones. Also, they deliver at a reasonable price point. So we're able to put the whole thing together for, I think it's $35. You can usually find it for $30 on the open market. Moving past the stone, I think what makes this, because the Whetstone, it's a great budget stone. I won't say it's the best one. There's some freakishly high quality Japanese stones out there that are excellent. And I'm not trying to say that this is going to compete with those, but it is a good bang for your buck. But past the stone, I think, is where the sharpener really offers value to somebody who wants to sharpen on a whetstone, something like this. We've got a water control base that is made of a high density plastic. It's plastic, nothing real special, but it's actually it's actually a bit more special than you think, considering that a lot of the traditional bases on the market are made of wood or stones that don't come with a base. And wood can collect a lot of the water and begin to mold and warp, and it doesn't hold the stone flat, which can be a really frustrating process when you're trying to sharpen a knife and you need it to be flat. So plastic is actually, a high density plastic is actually a great opportunity for this, because it doesn't allow for any water to remain in the base and for anything to grow. There's a little non-stick silicone mat that sits in the bottom of this that keeps that stone even more secure. And if there's any unevenness, this silicone mat, it's pretty thick, and it actually balances out or lets that stone just sit really level and secure in the base. So just all things focused on how do you make this a really consistent sharpening experience.
What I like about that little trough in there where that piece sits also, especially compared to some other whetstone products on the market, is you do have a bit of a dish in there, so that if you're using oil or water on the stone as you work, it's not going to slide off the stone and get onto your table. It's all going to be retained in there, keeping things nice and neat until you're ready to clean up.
Yep. Yeah, whetstone sharpening is traditionally a messy process. That's just part of how it is. You have to keep dripping water on top of the stone, but this does eliminate a lot of that, actually, and while remaining a relatively low profile. This is not a huge tub sitting on your counter or your work surface, but it does catch a lot of the water. We've also got angle guides on here, and these angle guides are interchangeable with the angle guides from the bench stone. So the bench stone has the 20 and 25 degree. The whetstone has a 15 and a 17, and those magnet on and can be flipped over just like the bench stone. Again, just offering consistent, repeatable angles when sharpening. Again, a lot of people who want to sharpen on a whetstone have done it before. They've done it for a long time. They either like to match the very specific angle that is on the knife, and they say, I don't want to turn it into a 15 or 17 degree. I just want to do whatever is on there. And they've got a really good feel for, finding that edge angle and riding that through the stroke. If you have that muscle memory, that's awesome. And these actually will pull off and slide out, so they totally get out of your way, which is also a great benefit for, as you're sharpening, to then be able to continue your stroke off the edge of the stone rather than running into the opposing sharpening guide. So if you still do want to use a guide, you can just leave one in on one side, use the guide as a rest, and sharpen and push all the way off the edge, which will help to keep and restore really sharp tips, so that you're not, dragging that tip off the side. It can allow you to have a really smooth stroke.
Sure. Very nice.
I will say, you mentioned when sharpening with oil or water, this is a stone designed for water. I actually haven't tried sharpening on oil. I know that it works similarly on a stone like this, and I don't know for any reason why that wouldn't work, but I know that our official recommendation would be that this is a water stone. And oil and water don't mix. So if you have any plan to sharpen with water, definitely don't try oil first.
For sure. Yeah.
I would either try it on your own, let me know what you think, maybe run a YouTube video about it and call us out, and then we can figure that out. But also, I'm sure the engineers will tell me that I don't know what I'm talking about, and it's either oil's great or not at all. A few things. Yeah. So for those of us who don't know about whetstone sharpening, and I admit that I learned a lot here as we came out with this, and I spent a lot of time with the engineers and learning about this. It definitely needs to be used when wet. If you use a water stone without water, what you end up doing is breaking off the exposed abrasive pieces and shoving those down into some of the open gaps that are between those, and you end up totally flattening your stone and making that abrasive nearly worthless. So make sure that you use it with water, keep it wet, and that'll make sure that you're getting the best use out of it. You do have to take the stone and soak it in water. I usually use a little a plastic tub or something, or you could just put the sink plug in and set it in there. It's going to take maybe 10 to 15 minutes. But really what you're looking for is that no more bubbles are coming out of it. So you could pick it up and flip it over or tap on it, just move it around a little bit from time to time in that 10 to 15 minutes, just to make sure it gets fully saturated and soaked with water. And then keep a little dish of water or like a large eyedropper or something nearby and keep water. I'll usually just keep like a little bowl or a cup of water and stick a couple fingers in there and then dab it on the surface. What's happening with that is that this is super cool, and you guys can include this or not, but so you have all these little abrasives that stick up on a whetstone, and on their own, they're pretty brittle and they'll break off, and the knife may not be cut by that abrasive. It'll just push it over and break it off. And then, like I said, it'll just sit in the stone. If there's no water, it'll just kind of pack in there. If there is water though, what happens is that water fills all the space around those abrasives and holds them up with this hydraulic force. And so as you push down with your knife across the stone abrasive, you're pressurizing that water enough that it's supporting each of those little abrasive points so that they're strong enough to maintain or to stand upright and cut the knife metal.
Physics,
so that's physics, man. Yeah, it's super cool.
That is really cool.
I mean, and this is like why I think people love sharpening on a whetstone, is like just the how it works and why it works still. It's still a process. It takes time. You take a knife that's VG10 and try to sharpen that on a whetstone, and it's gonna like prepare to sit down for 30 or 40 minutes. If it's dull, you could touch it up a little faster than that, but prepare to commit some time. Anyway, yeah, it's a super fascinating piece. Also, as you're sharpening, the little bits of steel that come off end up sitting on top of the stone in what we call that slurry. And then those little bits of abrasive that end up breaking off and the bits of metal from your knife all act together to continue to sharpen the knife faster than if the knife, if you like had it cleaned every single stroke.
Sure.
So it's really interesting. Also, it's important so if you sharpen on the 6,000 grit, or on the 1,000 grit, raise a burr, and then you move over to the 6,000, I would wipe that clean, maybe with a rag or something, because what you may have is little pieces of the abrasive from the 1,000 side and pieces of the knife metal that have gotten into the tray. And you would need to put and then those are stuck on the fine side, and they're going to act like a more coarse abrasive. So wipe it down. Obviously, you're not drying out the stone, but maybe give it a little rinse, and then set it back in the tray for that final 6,000 side.
Sure, some real nice tips. Excellent.
Yeah. There's a lot to learn about it, and we'll have a video soon about a more in-depth, like how to use a whetstone sharpener. We haven't released that yet, but it is coming. But there's so many good YouTube videos about how to use a whetstone, and a lot of those tips you can find on there.
Excellent. Well, I've got one more question for you, sir.
Mm-hmm.
So for the folks out there who may not have tried a WorkSharp product in the past, why should they try one now?
Man, that's the money question, right?
What would you say to someone who's looking at a WorkSharp? What makes your product worth it to them?
Yeah. Well, I think it's so important to know. Yeah, one thing is so tough to nail it down to. It's so important.
I am putting
to
you
know
on the spot here. I realize that.
WorkSharp is such a cool company. And the products that we build are so geared to the user that, like you said, it's not a gimmick. Like, we're trying to make a tool that's really useful. And so I would encourage someone who hasn't tried a WorkSharp product to figure out, obviously, I want you to be our customer. And I think that we've got a tool for you. We've got a really wide variety of sharpeners. And our sharpeners, this is one of the things I really love, and something that I believe is true, is that our sharpeners and the material that comes with that, and the packaging and the story of our brand and who we are, is that you're going to learn something about sharpening when you're using and learning about our sharpeners. And I think that that's the empowering piece that gives you just a little bit more know-how of how to keep your knife sharp and be prepared for whatever you've got during the day, so that your pocket knife, your kitchen knife, whatever you're using, the tools you're using every day are sharp and ready to go. So a little bit of education with every product and time that you get to interact with our company.
I love it. All right, guys. Well, thanks for watching our Blade Show coverage here with the Work Sharp folks. Keep sticking around. We got a lot more stuff coming for the Blade Show week. Josh, thanks for taking some time with us today.
Absolutely, David. Appreciate the invite. Always happy to be here with you guys.
Excellent. And folks, if you want to get your hands on any of these products, well, let us know in the comments what you think. And if you want to get your hands on them, we'll leave links in the description to take you over to theknifecenter.com. Thanks, everybody.